Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network Novel. Navigation. Extreme Villain. Robbing Nami Robin Travel to the world of pirates, activate the Heavenly Destiny villain system, and earn rewards for doing evil. Luoxiu smiled and looked at the Hatter group, embarking on a crazy journey of causing trouble. Nami Robin. Empress Uta. Bring it to you. Luffy. Let go of Nami and Robin. Please move your hands away. Wuwuwu. Red-haired. Bastard. Give me Uta back. Don't do this to Uta. Don't force me. Don't force me to kneel down, please. Kaiduo. Hand over my daughter. Damn it. That's not how I use my daughter. 5 old stars. Go to the Holy Land and invite Lord Imm. What? Lord Imm also knelt down. There's no way to save him, wait until death. Luoxiu sat on the throne of the void, overlooking the entire world from above. Let me bring you a little villainous shock. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. 001, The Great Thief of the Kingdom of Goya. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In 1520, in the Kingdom of Goya, within the palace. As the younger brother of Sabo and the second son adopted by Sabo's parents, Stanley. Although he had just become the king of the Kingdom of Goya not long ago, however, at this moment, he knelt on the ground and crawled forward with his knees. Stanley held a newspaper on his hands, trembling, he spoke to the man sitting on the throne, who was naked and showed explosive muscles. Lord Luo Xiu, the newspaper you want. Luoxiu savored the grapes that the princess had brought to his mouth in his arms. As he hooked his hand, the newspaper in Stanley's hand flew directly into his hands. Feeling this scene, Stanley, I dare not even glance at the man who has taken over the princess. He knocked his head directly onto the ground, and his body began to shiver. After reading the content in the newspaper, Luo Xiu raised his eyebrows and murmured, touching his chin. Tisk, has even the Alabastion incident come to an end? The newspaper prominently read, as the king of the 7 armed seas, Proctor had ulterior motives towards Alabastion and was successfully arrested after being detected by Navy Colonel Smog. Luo Xiu is very clear, the Alabastion incident really defeated the sand crocodile, but it was Wang Lufei. It seems that my memory awakening time is indeed a bit late. Luo Xiu smacked his lips and silently murmured in his heart. System, open the panel. Host. Luo Xiu, identity. Rebel of Destiny, ability. Time fruit, finger gun, iron block, system description. This system aims to cultivate the host into the strongest destined villain. As long as the host makes actions that conform to the villain's behavior, they will receive rewards. Note. For the main character group or characters with more strokes in the original work, the rewards will be even more generous. I've messed up the Kingdom of Goya like this, just gave me an iron block. Isn't it too much of a hurdle? As the saying goes, if an iron block hits, it's either fatal or fatal. Luo Xiu wouldn't use the iron block to foolishly wait for the enemy's attack to fall on him. Luo Xiu pursed his lips and was very unhappy about it. However, the fact that being a villain can earn rewards is very much in line with Luo Xiu's current appetite. Strictly speaking, Luo Xiu is also a traveler. However, it was only recently that memories of past lives were awakened. Luoxiu's identity is just an ordinary person from the East China Sea. As a result, the village that had lived for 18 years earlier was destroyed by pirates, and all but himself were killed. In order to seek revenge, Ginshin went to seek help from the Navy to destroy the pirate group. As a result, they were rejected by the Navy on the grounds of their unprotected value as ordinary people, and even their constantly pleading original bodies were violently beaten and thrown out by the Navy. While drifting on the sea, I happened to encounter the Heavenly Dragon Man who came to the Kingdom of Goya. The Heavenly Dragon Man thought it was I. Catching and directly shot and killed him. Even Luo Xiu didn't know how to evaluate this tragic experience. Fortunately, in the final moments of life, I awakened my past life memories and realized that I was actually a traveler. It also activated the Heavenly Destiny villain system, and while the injury was healed, it also received the time fruit gifted by the system's big gift package. After learning that being a villain can earn rewards, without any hesitation, Luo Xiu blacked out on the spot. First, go find the group of pirates and the navy and kill them. I have arrived in this kingdom of Goya again, using the fruit of time to control the flow of time and directly kill the Tianlong people and those members of the CP organization. Shortly after becoming the king of the kingdom of Goya, Stanley wanted to try to become a member of the Heavenly Dragon Man by taking this opportunity to please the Heavenly Dragon Man he had invited. He ordered the guards of the kingdom of Goya to kill Luo Xiu. And the result is already very obvious. Not only is the palace occupied, even the princess of the kingdom of Goya has become a plaything in the hands of Luo Xiu. Luo Xiu glanced at Stanley kneeling below and felt the trembling delicate body of the princess in his arms. Stanley, I've really been bothering you and the princess to take care of me lately. Stanley buried his head deep on the ground. I dare not even look up at Luo Xiu. I completely don't know whether I should be afraid or angry. No trouble. It's an honor for me and Sally Nankinet to be able to take care of you, Lord Loxiu. Luo Xiu looked at Stanley below with great interest and said calmly. Really? But I always feel like I'm really sorry. Stanley's body, curled up and kneeling, began to tremble, with cold sweat covering his forehead at some point, and his lips trembling as he spoke. Lord Luo Xiu, don't say that. No matter how long you want to stay in the kingdom of Goya, we won't refuse. Upon hearing these words, Luo Xiu's lips curved slightly, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Looking at Stanley, who had previously scolded himself as a lowly person, and even had no qualifications to directly look at the Tianlong people, he smiled and said. Since that's the case, why do you still have to tell the world government and navy about the situation of the kingdom of Goya? Ha! Upon hearing these words, Stanley was struck by lightning and could no longer hold on, collapsing to the ground. Luo Xiu, this guy, actually knows. You should know that the kingdom of Goya is one of the world's government member countries. After encountering such a situation, it is absolutely qualified to seek help from the world government and navy. Especially Luo Xiu, this evil thief, also committed the act of killing the Tianlong people. Both the world government and the navy will definitely not let him go. As Stanley anxiously waited for the navy to come to the kingdom of Goya and kill Loxiu, did this guy even know that he had told the world government and navy everything? With the brutality of this guy, I can never survive. At this moment, Stanley suddenly lifted his head and roared at Luo Xiu with his canthus about to crack. You! Luo Xiu! You will definitely pay the price for your actions. The world government and navy will never let you go. Upon hearing this, Luo Xiu tugged at the corner of his mouth and looked at Stanley with a smile, saying. Is that right? But unfortunately, you are destined not to see it. Luo Xiu raised his index and middle fingers, pointed the gun, and instantly pierced through Stanley's chest. Stanley fell to the ground with his eyes closed, as if anger and grief were still lingering in his eyes. Upon seeing this scene, the princess in Luo Xiu's arms collapsed to the ground in an instant, looking at Luo Xiu in front of her with a fearful expression on her face. Her head shook and she pleaded for mercy. Please, don't kill me, let me go. Luo Xiu's expression was not affected by Stanley's death at all, he said with a smile. Don't be foolish, princess. I won't kill women. However, since you want to survive, you naturally need to pay a price, do you understand? I understand. The princess's face turned pale as she felt Luo Xiu's gaze. She hurriedly nodded and knelt down in front of Luo Xiu, feeling extremely obedient. Luo Xiu squinted his eyes and watched the scene expressionlessly. He remembers very clearly that when he first saw this princess, her eyes were full of arrogance, looking at him like those of a reptile. However, at this moment, the other person was like a dog, gently lying in front of him. This kind of transformation is the most irresistible. 002, the bartender from Windmill Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Windmill Village, in a tavern. Waha. That kid Luffy is really good. Did you already have a bounty of 100 million Bailey just after leaving Windmill Village? Luffy's bounty seems to have risen faster than that guy Ace before. The bandit Dayton's family is gathering in this tavern, celebrating that Luffy received a bounty of up to 100 million Bailey. And as the owner of the tavern, Magino, then he propped his hands on his chin, and a hint of concern flashed in his eyes. Luffy, along the way, he must have encountered many dangers, right? After hearing Magino's words, the Dan slammed the table in front of him with force and laughed heartily. Don't worry, Magino. That little devil from Luffy is definitely not a problem. It's not just that Ace will help him, but if he really encounters danger, that guy Capp will definitely not sit idly by. I just don't know which of the two little ghosts, Luffy and Ace, will ultimately become the One Piece King. The Dan's words received unanimous agreement from her subordinates and they all spoke up. The Dan's boss is right. As the grandson of a naval hero, how could Luffy encounter a life-threatening situation? He must have had a lot of fun along the way, right? Ha 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 hiccup. Magino looked at the obviously drunk group of Dayton and shook her head with a helpless chuckle. The Dan's words seemed to make some sense. Luffy is not just Mr. Capp's grandson, even Mr. Shanks, who is the fourth emperor of the New World, is his guide to becoming a pirate. Ace has become the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, even Luffy has a bounty of 100 million Bailey. Unfortunately, Sabo was killed by the Tianlong man back then. Thinking about Sabo's situation, Magino's smile gradually faded and a hint of sadness appeared in her eyes. Just as Dayton boasted about how he had taught Luffy before, the door of the tavern was suddenly pushed open, and a figure walked slowly in. Magino looked at the young man with black hair and pupils, a handsome appearance, and an elegant smile on his face, and asked. Hello sir, may I ask if you are here to buy wine? Faced with Magino's question, Luo Xiu pondered for a moment and then smiled and said. I guess so. I heard that the owner of this tavern has excellent brewing skills, so I thought about coming over to taste it. Magino felt a little embarrassed when she heard this, and as she brought Luo Xiu the fine wine she had brewed herself, she waved her hand and said. You flattered me. Wow huh. Little ghost, do you have a good eye? The wine made by Magino is very delicious. The Dan's chubby face turned red from drunkenness and he shouted at Luo Xiu in a careless manner. And Luo Xiu looked at the Dan with great interest, savoring the wine brought by Magino while smiling and asking. Did you just say that Straw Hat Luffy? It has to be said that in this world of the Pirate King, it seems that every person related to Wang Luffy, regardless of their original identity or actions, can be directly whitewashed in the end. Whether it's this bandit group led by Dayton, or the deserters Wang Kabi and Birumober who made great contributions in the top war neutrality. Even the fish man Xiaoba from the Dragon Pirates group, who had occupied Kekia West Village for so many years, ended up becoming a friend of the main character group. In Luo Xiu's view, there is no truly good person in the world of the Pirate King. Of course, those so-called villains cannot be considered competent at all. Since that's the case, Luo Xiu doesn't mind at all, bringing them a little antagonistic shock. The Dan was stunned and placed the wine bowl in his hand on the table, looking confused. Do you know that kid Luffy? Feeling the gaze of everyone in the tavern, Luo Xiu smiled and said. Yes, of course I do. We are friends. Are Luffy's friends. After hearing Luo Xiu's words, whether it's Dayton and his team, or Magino, they all came straight to their senses. The Dan's eyes were bright as he repeatedly asked questions. Luffy's friend. Do you have a good relationship with Luffy? How did you get to know each other? Faced with Dan's repeated questioning, Luo Xiu did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Dan and his group on the opposite table with an interested expression. Luo Xiu took a sip of the fine wine and said with a smile. Our relationship is certainly good, so good that I can personally kill him now. As the words fell, the tavern was instantly plunged into an extremely eerie atmosphere of silence. Clattering. The wine bowl in Dayton's hand fell onto the table. Dan, who had reacted, suddenly stood up, facing Luo Xiu across from him. He glared angrily and roared softly. What are you saying? You're actually looking for trouble with Luffy, this guy. Dan was like a furious lioness, picking up the stick next to him and putting on a ready-to-take-action posture. It seems that as long as Luo Xiu dares to say such a thing again, the stick in her hand will directly hit Luo Xiu's head. Not only Dayton, but also her subordinates are all eager to try. Upon seeing this, Magino quickly grabbed Dan's arm and repeatedly advised him. Alright, Dayton, don't get excited. Sir, may I ask if there is any conflict between you and Luffy? Luffy, he's a very good person. Well, it's really good. Not long after the situation improves, the extremely vicious prisoners in the advancing city will be released. Luo Xiu smacked his lips and stopped thinking about these things. In this world filled with the law of the jungle and all the villains, there is nothing more suitable for a better survival than being an unscrupulous villain. Since targeting the protagonist group and those characters with a lot of writing in the original work, they can receive even more generous rewards. That group of Dayton has been the target of Luo Xiu's hunting from the beginning. At this point, Luo Xiu temporarily ignored Dan, but curled his lips and looked at Magino, saying, This kind of thing is not important. I came here specifically for you. Your brewing skills are indeed good. So, in the future, just follow me and let me taste the wine you brew alone. Magino felt the scorching gaze of Loqiu and unconsciously took 2 steps back, her face full of panic and confusion. However, Dan on the side did not hesitate and stood in front of Magino, raising his wooden stick and shouting angrily at Luo Xiu. Little devil! Get out of here now. Otherwise, you will never want to leave. 003 Compromised and Resigned Magino. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not only did Dan covet Luo Xiu, but her subordinates also directly surrounded him. A few of them pulled out their knives and looked at Luo Xiu with a grim smile. Dayton boss. It seems that we have been silent for too long. Even this kind of little devil dares to trouble Magino in front of us. Kill him. Let him take a good look at the strength of our Dayton team. Nowadays, anyone who can be called a thief, whether it's a pirate or a mountain thief, has no life in their hands. The Dayton group only appeared to have some warmth because they were afraid of Capp, and because they were on the side of the protagonist. However, before Luo Xiu could make any movement, Magino immediately grabbed Dan's arm and said with an unbearable expression. Dan sang, let's just forget about it. Don't kill him, just let him leave. TSK, you're really a gentle and kind bartender. However, the more Magino was like this, the more curious Luo Xiu became. After her evil fall, what kind of appearance would she look like? Magino. You're just too kind. Dan let out the same sigh as Luo Xiu, but unfortunately, his face was already filled with displeasure. He raised his wooden stick and pointed it directly at Luo Xiu, saying fiercely. Didn't you hear it just now? This little devil, but he said he was going to kill that guy Luffy. I absolutely won't allow it. Let this little devil go find Luffy's trouble. As Dan's words fell, Luo Xiu slowly stood up and looked at the group of bandits across from him, speaking calmly. That's really a coincidence. For me, you are like Wang Luffy, both prey. Also, there's too much nonsense from you. Just as Dan and his group were puzzled by Magino about what Luo Xiu meant by Wang Luffy, Luo Xiu raised his index and middle fingers together, aiming directly at the opposite Dan. Finger the gun. She. A burst of air echoed, and Dedan's bulky body collapsed with a loud bang, falling heavily to the ground. Bang. Dedan boss. Dedan's heart was pierced, and the scorching crimson blood spread to the surrounding floor in the blink of an eye. After seeing this scene, the bandits widened their pupils and their eyes were filled with anger and disbelief. They raised their sticks or swords in their hands and rushed towards Luo Xiu. Without any hesitation, Luo Xiu directly used his finger gun to kill these mountain bandits, turning them into corpses lying on the ground. In just an instant, the situation underwent this earth-shattering transformation. The group of bandits Daden, who were originally celebrating Luffy's 100 million Bailey bounty in the tavern, have now turned into several bodies with residual warmth. Watching this scene, Magino collapsed weakly to the ground, tears gushing from her eyes, and she began to cry softly and bitterly. Dedan sang, "Everyone. Why, exactly why? Why on earth did you do such a thing?" Magino lifted her head and stared at Loxiu with teary eyes, her once gentle face now filled with hatred. She really couldn't understand. The man who appeared from somewhere first said he wanted to kill Luffy, then said he wanted to let himself go with him, and then he directly killed Daden and the others. Where did Dedan and himself provoke him? Luoxiu sat back in his chair, arms wrapped around his chest, and looked at Magino, who was lying paralyzed on the ground. This kind of pear blossom with rain on it makes one unconsciously feel a desire to destroy it. Why? Because I am a vicious villain. As a villain, it is very reasonable and logical to do such a thing, right? Magino was stunned, she couldn't understand the bright and gentle smile on Loxiu's face. How could this man show a gentle demeanor at the same time, and yet doing such a cruel thing on one side? Magino took a deep breath, tears still pouring out of her eyes, but she spoke in a determined and deep voice. You kill me. I absolutely can't leave with you. Even if it's death, I definitely won't. To Magino's surprise, upon hearing his words, Luo Xiu not only did not feel any anger, but also smiled and raised his fingers, picking up his chin. Luo Xiu slightly bent down, almost pressing his face against Magino's face, and slowly said with a smile. Really? Even if I could kill everyone in Windmill Village, you wouldn't leave with me, would you? Although Luo Xiu's voice was full of magnetism and sounded extremely gentle, Magino was like falling into an ice cave. Magino looked at Luo Xiu's handsome face in front of her with a breakdown, as if her heart was being held by a big hand, making her feel like she couldn't catch her breath. You. What do you mean, what do you mean? Luo Xiu's mouth curved slightly, and he said calmly. The meaning is, Magino, you don't want to see the villagers of Windmill Village either, because of your refusal, they all died, right? Desperate Magino almost fainted, and in front of him, Luo Xiu had become a demon-like existence in Magino's heart. His meaning is already very clear. If he dares to refuse, the entire Windmill Village will no longer exist. After witnessing with her own eyes how Luo Xiu killed the group of Daden, Magino had no doubt that he could really do it. Mr. Capp, who is proud of the Windmill Village, is not here, and both Ace and Luffy have already left. The group of Daden who were just killed by Luo Xiu are already the biggest reliance of Windmill Village. For the kind and gentle Magino, no matter what the cost is, she doesn't want to see the villagers of Windmill Village killed by Luo Xiu. Magino remained silent for a long time before finally whispering in despair. I'll come with you, as long as you're willing to let go of the villagers of Windmill Village. Upon hearing this, Luo Xiu smiled and let go of his hand, whispering softly. So, let me feel your sincerity. Magino looked at Luo Xiu in confusion, her face full of confusion. What does this mean? Luo Xiu chuckled and said, what do you think? Feeling Luo Xiu's gaze, Magino finally realized it with a second thought. At this moment, in Magino's heart, Luo Xiu had become synonymous with the devil. Just brutally killed Daden and the others, did you force yourself? No way. Never compromise with this guy. But if refused, would everyone in the village really be cruelly killed by him, just like Dayton and the others? Magino fought for a long time, but after thinking about the villagers of Windmill Village, she ultimately chose to compromise and obediently lay under the table where Luo Xiu was. 004, Time stops, bold ideas. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Luo Xiu ignored the bodies of Dan and his group scattered on the ground in the tavern. Not only did my mood not deteriorate as a result, but my thoughts became more accessible. Luo Xiu is very clear, although there is not a very in-depth description of Dan and his group in the original plot, but they are mountain bandits. However, it was only after being caught by Capp that the Dayton group did not continue their career as mountain bandits. However, one can also guess with their buttocks that before this, how could Dan and his group not have been stained with the blood of innocent people? Don't you see, the bandit King Sig who shouted and killed 56 fourth emperors like Shanks? Like Dan and his group, they are all mountain bandits. What is their behavior style? The reason why they were loved by many people in the original plot is simply because they belong to the main character group's camp. Luo Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, and a look of enjoyment appeared on his face. Raised the wine bowl on the table and savored the fine wine brewed by the bartender Magino herself. If you think about it carefully, in the original work, there are many extremely vicious guys who, due to their relationship with the main characters, have turned from bad to good and have been forcibly whitewashed. Not to mention anything else, just the deserter Wang Kabi and his good friend Barumabur are the two biggest quirks. In the crucial top-tier war for the Navy, first, he became a deserter, and then with his own strength, he prevented Red Dog from killing Luffy, even stepping on his horse and facing the gaze of people from all over the world. As a deserter, he turned around and harshly reprimanded the naval general, Red Dog. This kind of thing, no matter how you think, you feel like a ghost beast. What about the outcome? After the top war ended, not only did Kirby and Barumabur not receive any punishment for it, but they also got promoted. At the beginning, in Luo Xiu's eyes, the world of the Pirate King was indeed passionate. However, later on, Luo Xiu realized that, the so-called passion is simply a group of second-generation and third-generation games. Just say Wang Lufei, if it weren't for his father Dolag. Not to mention becoming the Pirate King, he can't even leave the East China Sea and will be executed by Smog in Rog Town. When introducing oneself to ordinary people, they say they are Luffy and want to become the man of the Pirate King. When faced with powerful enemies, he became Munch D. Luffy. How ironic it is to think about it. Just as Luo Xiu sighed at the deformity of this world, the ethereal sound of the system also appeared in Luo Xiu's mind. Host ravages Windmill Village, kills Dayton and his team, helps Magino make wine, rewards. Time stop, time fruit skill, moon step, time stops. Smashing the Ludo. Luo Xiu's eyes lit up, and a bold idea came to mind. No, as an extremely villainous villain, using time and fruit to do such things is called a bold idea. That's as it should be. However, what really caught Luo Xiu's heart was, after the awakening of the fruit of time, I'm afraid we can do more than just manipulate the flow of time and make it stop. Those who have been dead for many years, perhaps we can also use this ability to pull it to the current timeline. If Luo Xiu remembers correctly, when Belmare was killed, it seemed that he was only in his 20s. Standing with the current Nami and Noqigao, isn't it like being a sisters? Even, not only Belmare. Nicole Orbia, as Nicole Robin's mother, the Lady of the Kingdom of Harmony, aren't these all good goals? I am a righteous villain, is it reasonable for me to do such a thing? Luo Xiu's mouth curved slightly, and an evil smile appeared on his face. The smile on Luo Xiu's face made Magino shiver a bit. After cleaning up the water stains and spilled wine on the table, he whispered. Can I bury the bodies of Dayton and his companions? Upon hearing this, Luo Xiu smiled and shook his head, saying. No, you have such delicate palms. How could I be willing to let you be stained with blood? Magino's body trembled. Although it sounded warm on the surface, she felt only fear. After a long silence, Magino finally mustered up her courage. Let's leave now. Luo Xiu looked at the bartender in front of him with great interest and asked with a smile. Why, don't you plan to say goodbye to acquaintances in the village? Upon hearing this, Magino's pupils contracted slightly, and she shook her head and waved her hands in panic, repeatedly refusing. No, please, I have promised to leave with you. Please don't harm anyone else in the village. Luo Xiu grabbed onto Magino's slender waist and said lightly. Then let's go. Magino breathed a deep sigh of relief in her heart, not even having the courage to look back at the Daiden and others on the ground. She obediently walked out, being held by Luo Xiu. However, what almost made Magino collapse was that she ran into the village chief shortly after leaving the house. Magino's heart was filled with worry, afraid that Luo Xiu would brutally kill the village chief like he had done to Daiden and the others before. Just as Magino's brain almost crashed, the village chief glanced at Luo Xiu and asked in confusion. Magino, what are you? Seeing that Luo Xiu had no intention of taking action, Magino quickly said. Mr. Village Chief, I have something to do and I'll go out to the tavern. Could you please help me take care of it recently? Without waiting for the village chief to respond, Magino hurriedly took steps and left with Luo Xiu. The village chief scratched his head, his old face full of confusion. Who is the man holding on to Magino's waist? Why has he never seen it before? Why did Magino suddenly have to leave? Moreover, how did he feel that Magino walked a bit off course, as if she was limping? The village head, who was puzzled, shook his head and walked to the tavern. When he saw the tavern, even the door was unlocked. The village head roast at Magino was very careful. Why did he suddenly become like this? However, when he pushed open the door of the tavern, he was instantly stunned on the spot. Is this the group of Daiden? The village chief, who was scared by the bodies of Dadan and his group, almost sat down on the ground. At this moment, a villager from Windmill Village quickly ran over and shouted at the village chief. Village chief! Village chief! It's not good, village chief. I heard that the king of the kingdom of Goya was killed by a young man. And besides, there was also a heavenly dragon man who came to be invited to the kingdom of Goya. The village chief leaned directly against the door frame of the tavern, swallowed his saliva in fear, looked inside at the bodies of the Daiden and others, and murmured. Could it be the man who killed the king and the Tianlong people just now? What exactly happened between him and Magino? Why did Magino leave with him? 005 Capp is out to capture Loxiu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Naval Headquarters, within the Marshal's office. All the naval executives present at Marinfando have already arrived in this office. Red dogs, green pheasants, yellow apes, kapu, and crane staff all looked at the Warring States period sitting at the top. As a naval marshal in the Warring States period, at this moment, he was scolded by the phone worm in front of him. Warring States period. In the name of the 5 old stars, I command your navy to immediately dispatch naval commanders to arrest the little ghost named Luo Xiu and hand it over to our world government for disposal. That damn bastard dares to commit the murder of the Tianlong people. Our world government must make him pay the price. Killing the Tianlong people. The Warring States period frowned upon hearing these words and looked at the phone worms in front of them, asking in a deep voice. Where is he? After hearing about the issue of the Warring States period, Wu Laoxing did not hesitate at all and angrily spoke in a voice that suppressed his raging anger. East China Sea. That bastard not only killed the Tianlong people, but also killed the king of the kingdom of Goya. During the Warring States period, upon hearing this, my pupils slightly contracted and my face became solemn. I understand. I will have the naval admiral deploy to capture the enemy. After receiving an answer from the Warring States period, the 5 old stars across from him did not hesitate and hung up the phone worm with a loud bang. The Warring States period shook its head as it looked at the phone worm, then turned its head to look at the senior naval officers across from it and said in a deep voice. You have also heard the words of the 5 old stars. Whether it's the killing of the Tianlong people or the killing of the king of the kingdom of Goya, a member of the world government, our navy must take action. The senior naval officers present nodded upon hearing this. The Red Dog volunteered and said. Marshal of the Warring States period, let me handle this task. Before the Warring States period could agree, the Yellow Ape beside shook its head and said. Luoxiu, I seem to have just heard of this name. Have you heard of it? Whether it was the Warring States period, Red Dog, Green Pheasant, or Kapu and Crane Staff, all turned their attention to the Yellow Ape. Feeling the gaze of everyone, the Yellow Ape scratched its head, pondered for a moment, and suddenly spoke up. I remember. The one who slaughtered the 154 branches of the East China Sea seems to be this Luo Xiu. After hearing the words of the Yellow Ape, the Warring States period suddenly stood up and glared angrily at the Yellow Ape in a deep voice. What does it mean to massacre the 154 branches of the East China Sea? Did that guy named Luo Xiu do such a thing besides killing the Tianlong people and the king of the kingdom of Goya? Not only was the Warring States period reaction so intense, Red Dog's gaze suddenly became extremely fierce. Even the Green Pheasant, Kapu, and Crane Staff all had very unpleasant expressions. I thought Luo Xiu was already crazy enough to kill the Tianlong people and the king of the Goya kingdom. As a result, he didn't even let go of the navy of the East China Sea 154 branch. Where exactly did this extremely vicious guy come from? To the surprise of the Warring States period, Red Dog, and others, under their gaze, the face of the Yellow Ape suddenly became somewhat awkward. The Yellow Ape scratched its head, trying to lower its voice as much as possible, and said somewhat hesitantly. According to the information I have received, the reason why Luo Xiu committed the act of slaughtering 154 branches. It's because everyone in his hometown, except himself, was killed by pirates, and Luo Xiu went to the 154 branch to request the navy there to kill that group of pirates. But as a result, not only was it rejected, but it was even beaten up by those sailors and thrown out. This incident didn't last long. Not only were the group of pirates killed by Luo Xiu, but even the 154 branch was destroyed. As the words fell, the marshal's office suddenly became silent. They can roughly guess, perhaps, by chance, that guy named Luo Xiu received a demonic fruit. With the power of devil's fruit, killed that group of pirates for revenge, and even destroyed 154 branches. If we follow this statement, isn't it a deserved punishment for the destruction of the 154 branches? No. After experiencing a brief awkwardness, the Warring States period's face suddenly became extremely cold, and he slapped the table in front of him in a deep voice. Even so, he should not have committed the act of slaughtering 154 branches. Red Dog also said angrily with a gloomy face. Leave that guy to me, and I will catch him and let him know what the cost is for such behavior. Just as the Warring States period was about to nod and agree, the nearby Kapu suddenly spoke up. Warring States period, let me handle the task of capturing Luo Xiu. During the Warring States period, his eyebrows furrowed and he looked at Kapu. He looked up and down at the other person and asked with some disbelief. You. Kapu, are you sure? Capp grinned and nodded heavily. Of course. Since Kapu has proposed to do this task, the Warring States naturally will not refuse. Even if the 5 old stars knew that the Warring States would hand over the task of capturing Luo Xiu to Luo Xiu, they will never have any dissatisfaction either. After all, Kapu's strength is not inferior to that of a naval general at all. But before the senior naval officers leave, the Warring States period still left Kapu behind. Kapu. Your grandson has caused quite a stir this time. This time, besides going to arrest Luo Xiu, you also need to find that little ghost named Luffy. Tell him to give up being a pirate. Capp scratched his head upon hearing this and laughed heartily. This kind of thing, the old man said it but didn't count. That kid Luffy insisted on becoming a pirate. What can I do? The Warring States period gave Capp a fierce glare, his face full of displeasure. Capp. You guys need to stop being too moderate. Don't forget, I let go of your other grandson back then. What else do you want this time? Do you want your grandson to join the Whitebeard pirates? What the Warring States period said was obviously Fire Fist Ace, who is currently the captain of the second team of the Whitebeard pirates. During the Warring States period, the more I thought about it, the more angry I became. Capp is a magnificent naval hero. As a result, my son was the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Both grandsons have now become pirates. If this kind of thing were to spread, it would not only embarrass Capp, but even the Navy would be ashamed of it. As the Warring States became more serious, Capp immediately laughed and patted the Warring States on the shoulder, saying, all right, I'll just tell Luffy. Don't worry, Warring States, I will make Luffy give up being a pirate. If he doesn't listen, I will personally arrest him. After hearing these words during the Warring States period, his face slightly improved. Immediately nodded and waved, saying, go away, go away. Whether it's arresting Luo Xiu or asking your grandson to give up being a pirate, nothing unexpected can happen. Capp nodded casually and left the office with a chuckle. Although Capp said, if Luffy doesn't listen, he will personally arrest him. However, if he doesn't catch it, there's nothing he can do. 006, don't misunderstand, I'm not a good person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kekiaxi Village. You. Who are you? After opening the door, Noqigao looked at Luo Xiu and Magino standing at the door, and a hint of doubt flashed in his eyes. He couldn't help but ask a question. Magino's head drooped slightly, her eyes filled with pity. She was well aware that the woman in front of her was probably going to end up the same way as herself. Faced with Nochi's question, Luo Xiu asked with a smile. Excuse me, you are Nami's sister. Is Noqi tall right? Noqi was stunned for a moment, then blinked at Luo Xiu and said. That's right, I'm Nami's sister. Are you here to find Nami? Nami left with her friends a while ago. Luo Xiu gave Noqigao a deep glance and shook his head, saying. I'm not looking for Nami, I'm here for you. Find me. Noqigao became even more confused upon hearing these words. Unlike before, Nami bought back the village from the dragon in order to raise 100 million Bailey. As a sister, Noqigao has never left Kekiaxi village in these years. Luo Xiu suddenly came to find him, and it was true that he couldn't control Noqigao. However, after thinking for a moment, Noqigao still pushed the door to signal. So, let's talk about it. Seeing Luo Xiu with a smile on his face, he walked straight in. Magino's head drooped slightly and she quietly followed behind Luo Xiu. Since leaving Windmill Village, Magino has been staying with Loxiu all along. God knows what she has been through these past few days. Let's put it this way, on the deck, cabin, sea, and even on the lookout tower of that ship, all traces of her activity have been left behind. The power possessed by Luo Xiu is so great that it makes Magino fear. When he learned that he was coming to Coco West Village to search for Noqigao, Magino's first thought was not about worrying about Noqigao, but I breathed a deep sigh of relief in my heart. Finally, someone can help her share the gunfire. She Magino, if this continues like this, she really won't be able to withstand it anymore. After pouring a glass of water for both Luo Xiu and Magino, Noqigao propped his palm on his chin, his eyes constantly wandering around Luo Xiu and Magino. She always felt that the relationship between these two people seemed a bit strange. But this kind of thing has nothing to do with her either. Let's first figure out if this man is looking for us, what exactly is going on. Noqi shook her head secretly and watched as Luo Xiu spoke up and asked. You said you came to see me, so what's up? Magino sipped the water from the cup while secretly glancing at Luo Xiu beside her with the corner of her eye, wanting to see how he would answer the question. Under the gaze of the two women, Luo Xiu's mouth curved slightly, and an evil smile appeared on his face. Luo Xiu looked at Noqigao across from him and said calmly. Noqigao, I'm here to find you. I want you to be my woman and leave Kekiaxi village with me. Upon hearing these words, Magino didn't grab a single one and the cup in her hand fell directly onto the table. Bang! Magino, who had come to her senses, trembled violently as she looked at Luo Xiu apologizing repeatedly. I'm sorry, it was my carelessness. Luo Xiu only glanced at Magino without saying much, which made Magino feel like a giant rock had fallen steadily in his heart. She was really shocked by Luo Xiu's words. Magino thought of several scenes, but I still didn't expect that Luo Xiu would be so direct. Even Magino's reaction is like this, let alone Nochi, who is the party involved, is too high. After a brief moment of shock, Nochi, who had come to her senses, stood up high and forcefully, overturning all the chairs and making a chaotic noise. What do you mean, what do you mean? Faced with Noqigao's somewhat shy and angry gaze, Luo Xiu not only did not show any timidity, but also smiled and spread out his hand. Isn't the meaning very clear now? Noqi took a deep breath, her towering chest rapidly rising and falling. After a while, Noqigao's eyes had become very cold, and he didn't even glance at Luo Xiu. He said coldly. No matter who you are, please leave. What you said was just a dream. Noqi's high performance is very resolute, no matter what identity Luo Xiu has, she will never compromise with the other party. However, Luo Xiu reached out his palm and wrapped it around Magino's slender waist beside him, smiling as he said. Magino, do you feel familiar with this scene? Magino hung her head and did not answer. She certainly feels familiar. When I was at the Windmill Village tavern before, she firmly said that even in death, she would never leave with Luo Xiu and become his woman. But as a result, after spending these few days together, all the functions of her wine cellar have been developed one by Luo Xiu. The Noqigao on the other side is also absolutely impossible to escape this fate. Luo Xiu's words, as well as Magino's reaction, made Noqi feel a little uneasy. Feeling the scorching gaze of Luo Xiu sweeping over her, Noqi gritted her scalp and said. If there's nothing else, please leave here. Upon hearing this, Luo Xiu tugged at the corners of his mouth and joked. Well, are you misunderstood me in treating me like a good person? My words just now were not discussing with you, but notifying you. Noqi's face changed back and forth, feeling a bit lost for a moment. And after Luo Xiu stood up, he walked up to Noqigao and extended his fingers to dance on Noqigao's delicate and beautiful face. As far as I know, this village holds a very special significance for you, right? Noqigao wanted to open Luo Xiu's finger, but for some reason, his palm was a bit disobedient. And Luo Xiu's sentence, let Noqigao have some bad speculations in her heart, feeling Luo Xiu's fingers swiping over his face, Noqi asked with a pale face, tall and small. What exactly are you trying to say? Luo Xiu's fingers paused and slowly moved to Noqigao's chin, suddenly making Noqigao look at him. Luo Xiu's face was within striking distance of Noqigao's exquisite and beautiful face, even to the point where Noqigao could feel the hot air emanating from Luo Xiu's nose. Just as Noqigao was at a loss and her psychological defense line was broken, she wanted to step back and distance herself from Luo Xiu. The words spoken by Luo Xiu left Noqigao stunned on the spot, and his face instantly turned pale. What I want to say is that rejecting what I say comes at a cost. And the price you need to pay is to have the entire Kekiaxi village destroyed. Now, tell me your answer. 007 Noqigao's request. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Luoxiu's magnetic and gentle voice echoed in this room. However, his words, but it made Nochi's face instantly turn pale, stumbling, almost falling to the ground. After a while, Noqigao Kai finally glared angrily at Luo Xiu and said angrily. What kind of person are you, this guy? Do you think that our Kekiaxi village would be so easily destroyed? Luoxiu didn't answer, just smiled and raised his right hand, pointing towards the wall. The index and middle fingers are together, and with a thought, the finger gun is activated. Bang! With a loud bang, a large hole was instantly pierced through the wall by a pointed gun. Crushed stones splattered everywhere, and dust covered the sky, covering Noqigao's line of sight. Seeing this scene, Noki's high psychological defense line was directly broken, sitting on the ground in one gulp. Luo Xiu looked down at Noki sitting on the ground, looking lost and disoriented, and said calmly. Now, do you still doubt whether I have this power? Noqigao didn't answer, just sitting on the ground in silence, doubting life. She really can't understand, why did Kekiaxi village encounter so many hardships? Mingming village has just been snatched back from the dragon pirates. Nami followed the members of the Straw Hat Pirates to pursue her dreams. She can also stay in the village with peace of mind, plant oranges, and wait for the newspaper with news about Nami to appear. But what's going on now? Why did the man in front of me do this? Why are you targeting Kekiaxi village? Noki slowly lifted her head and looked at Luo Xiu with slightly red eyes, her face already covered in confusion. Luo Xiu crouched down and said with a smile. Because I am not a good person, and even the most vicious villain. Luo Xiu's honesty made Noki feel a bit uncomfortable in her freshman year of high school. After a while, Noqigao Kai finally spoke in a low tone. But why did you choose me? I'm just an ordinary person, is it worth doing something like this? Noqigao really can't understand, why would I be targeted by the man in front of me who claims to be the most vicious villain? However, when faced with Nochi's high question, Luo Xiu only smiled and said. Whether it's worth it or not depends on what I say. Noki fell silent. On one side is the village, on the other side is herself, even she doesn't know what kind of decision she should make when facing such a problem. And Luo Xiu did not urge him, but instead calmly looked at Noqigao in front of him. For Luo Xiu, since he has arrived in the world of the Pirate King and even activated the Heavenly Destiny villain system, he has this way of gaining power as long as he can do evil. Of course, Luo Xiu wants to let himself go. Not to mention anything else, just the experience of being repeatedly attacked by pirates, navy, and Tianlong people is enough to support Luo Xiu's complete blackening. As long as I promise to go with you, will you let go of the other people in Kekiaxi village? Noki spoke in a high-pitched and extremely low tone, with a dark and unclear expression on her face. Luo Xiu's gaze lingered on Noqigao's body, and he said with a smile. Of course. For me, there are only 3 valuable people in the entire Kekiaxi village. 3 people. Noki raised her head high and looked at Luo Xiu. Who are the 3 people you mentioned? You, and your sister, Nami. Luo Xiu gave Noqigao a meaningful glance and casually said. As for the last one, you will know later. I just don't know that by the time Luo Xiu's time fruit ability awakens, he will really pull Belmare, who has been dead for many years, to this timeline. Seeing Belmare come back to life from the dead, what would be the reaction between Noqigao and Nami? What Luo Xiu looks forward to more is that, what kind of beautiful scenery will it be when Belmare, Noqigao and Nami, the foster mother and daughter, stand together like sisters. Thinking of that scene, Luo Xiu couldn't help but curl his lips. Although I don't know exactly what Luo Xiu is thinking, but Noqigao in front of him could also feel from the change in his eyes that the man in front of him, what he was thinking in his heart, was definitely related to himself. But besides agreeing to Luo Xiu, what could she do? Noki's face flashed with a hint of melancholy, and her voice was slightly hoarse. I promise to leave with you. In order to save the village, Nami was able to steal money from pirates at the age of only 10 to buy the village back from the dragon. Now, it's also her turn to make sacrifices for the village. Just as Luo Xiu nodded in satisfaction and wanted to say something, Noqigao suddenly stood up and looked at Luo Xiu seriously, saying in a deep voice. I promise to leave with you, but I also have a request. Luo Xiuyang raised his hand, gesturing for her to speak. Noqigao didn't hesitate either. After gritting her teeth, a hint of hatred appeared on her face. I want you to help me kill a naval colonel. As long as you can kill that naval colonel and don't involve Kokaya West Village, no matter what you ask me to do, I can promise you. Navy Colonel. Is that Colonel Mouse? Luo Xiu raised his eyebrows, and he could clearly feel the anger and hatred emanating from Noqigao's body in front of him. So, in the original plot, it's not that we don't bother Colonel Mouse, but rather that we dare not. The most bizarre thing is, after the incident in Kekiaxi village ended, the Colonel Mouse not only did not receive any punishment, on the contrary, they can continue to dominate the East China Sea. This also means that there is no true justice in this world. Under Noqigao's somewhat nervous and uneasy gaze, Luo Xiu nodded and said. Sure. Luoxiu agreed so abruptly, which surprised Noqigao a bit. You. Don't you ask why? Luo Xiu chuckled and asked in response. Do you need to ask? Before Noqigao could reply, Luo Xiu stepped forward and grabbed Noqigao's slender waist. Feeling the nervousness and helplessness of Noqigao in his arms, Luo Xiu didn't take it seriously, but said straightforwardly. I don't have that much time to waste here, come with me now. I'll take you and kill the naval colonel you mentioned. As Luo Xiu's words fell, Noqigao's originally uneasy heart gradually calmed down involuntarily. After thinking about Colonel Mouse's actions, Noqigao's eyes turned red and he wished that Colonel Mouse would appear in front of him now, so that Luo Xiu could kill him. Magino watched as Nachi walked out of the house with a dazed expression on her face, being led by Luo Xiu and following behind the two of them. She looked down and sighed in her heart. It seems that my penis has finally had time to rest. There are additional rules related to the work, which readers can take a look at to help make the author more motivated to code. The subsequent plot will only be more exciting and will never disappoint readers. Jia Jia Jia. Revenge with your own hands. Evil corruption. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As a naval colonel, Colonel Mouse is the head of the East China Sea 152 branch. To put it bluntly, in the sea area under the responsibility of the 152 branch in the East China Sea, Colonel Mouse has the most powerful power. However, Colonel Mouse sat stuffily in the office at this moment, his face filled with expressions of displeasure and anger. Damn it! The Straw Hat Pirates gang, these bastards, not only haven't been caught, but they've also been getting better and better. Colonel Mouse slapped the newspaper in front of him, and angry roars echoed throughout the entire office. The Straw Hat Pirates defeated the Dragon Pirates they collaborated with, causing Colonel Mouse to lose his financial path. I can only watch as the money that belongs to me returns to the hands of ordinary people. This made Colonel Mouse hate those guys from the Straw Hat Pirates to death. Adding oil and vinegar directly, the Straw Hat Pirates received a bounty of up to 30 million Bailey. After the Alabastion incident ended, not only did the Straw Hat Pirates not be arrested, but the little ghost of Straw Hat Luffy even received a bounty of 100 million Bailey. The more they thrive, the more incompetent and furious Colonel Mouse becomes. Ah, it seems like it's time to find another reliable pirate group to replace the evil dragon guy. Colonel Mouse touched his beard, his eyes rolled, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. Just as Colonel Mouse was pondering who could replace the dragon and become his new collaborator, a sailor suddenly knocked open the office door, which frightened Colonel Mouse. Bang! Damn it! How many times have I told you? You have to knock on the door before coming in. Colonel Mouse, who had reacted, slapped the table and roared at the sailor. However, what he didn't expect was that, the sea soldier had no time to pay attention to his anger, but said with a frightened expression. Colonel Mouse. Someone's coming in. Someone has invaded our 152 branch. Colonel Mouse was taken aback by these words and repeatedly asked. What does it mean? Who is the other party? How many people are there? What is the current situation? The sailor's eyes flashed with a hint of fear, and even his legs began to tremble. Gudong. After swallowing a mouthful of water, Haibing said with a face full of fear. 3 people. Only one person is taking action, that guy is a devil, he is killing outside. Listening to these incoherent words, Colonel Mouse's head was filled with big question marks. What exactly did this guy see? How did this happen? However, Colonel Mouse can roughly guess that the guy mentioned by this sea soldier is probably currently slaughtering 152 sea soldiers outside. Perhaps it won't be long before it's his turn as a naval colonel. At this point, Colonel Mouse ran straight to the position of the windowsill at the fastest speed, wanting to jump out and run away. Those sailors who never die have nothing to do with him. The most important thing now is for him to live well. However, Colonel Mouse had just pushed the window open when a mocking voice rang out. Oh, isn't this Colonel Mouse? The door to your office is over here, what's the point of running through the window? Colonel Mouse's neck stiffened as he turned his head, and he could clearly see the teasing smile on Luo Xiu's face. And the sailor was already lying on the ground, with a large hole in his chest, and the scorching crimson blood was rapidly spreading towards the surroundings. With a shudder, cold sweat slid down Colonel Mouse's forehead. The naval colonel, with a smile on his face that was countless times uglier than crying, pleaded to Luo Xiu. Wait. Although I don't know what you want, as long as you're willing to let me go, I can give you all my treasures. And if you kill a naval colonel, you will be wanted by the Navy. Please, let me go. Colonel Mouse said as he knelt down with a loud snap. However, in the face of his plea for mercy, Luo Xiu tugged at the corner of his mouth and looked at him with an idiot-like gaze. After killing you, those treasures of yours are different from mine. As for killing you, this naval colonel will be wanted. Do you think that your naval colonel carries more weight than the kings of the Tianlong people and the world government's allied countries? As the words fell, Colonel Mouse's pupils contracted slightly. He has already thought of who this man is. Previously, Marshal of the Warring States period personally issued an order to make all sailors in the East China Sea pay attention to this man named Luo Xiu. This ferocious guy committed the atrocities of killing the Tianlong people and the kings of the world government's allied countries. But why would such a ruthless person keep an eye on himself as a mere naval colonel? Hey! Without waiting for Colonel Mouse to plead, Luo Xiu turned his head to look at Noqigao beside him and said with a smile. Noqigao, since it's revenge, let's have you personally take action. Although Noqi's face was very pale, after hesitating for a moment, she nodded heavily. Originally, in Noqigao's view, she just wanted to request Loxiu to kill Colonel Mouse. But she never expected that, no matter what, even the other sailors from 152 branches, Luo Xiu is the same and has not let go. According to Luo Xiu, no sea soldier from the 152 branches is innocent. Even if it's not the murderer, it's still an accomplice. Kekiaxi village has been occupied by the dragon pirates for so many years, and these sea soldiers from the 152 branch have made great contributions. What makes Noqi feel a bit unbelievable to herself is that, she gradually accepted Luo Xiu's statement. Even when Noqi saw Loxiu killing those sailors one by one, her heart was filled with a sense of revenge. Speaking of this, Noqigao picked up a nearby gun directly, it landed on Colonel Mouse's head. Noqi's eyes were slightly red, and there was a strong hatred on her face. Colonel Mouse, do you still remember me? Colonel Mouse had already curled up in the corner, looking at Noqigao in front of him with a face full of fear. When he remembered Noqigao's identity and was about to say something, Noqigao pulled the trigger directly. Bang! With a gunshot, Colonel Mouse's head exploded like a watermelon. Even though her body was splattered with crimson blood and her pale brain, Noqigao's face only turned even paler, but a hint of pleasure flashed in her eyes. Noqigao only wants to send the mouse to death, he doesn't want to listen to his nonsense at all. Magino watched this scene in horror, her legs unconsciously retreating until she leaned against the wall. And Luo Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, and a strange smile appeared on his face. It seems that compared to Magino, Noqigao has come from behind and fallen even earlier than Magino. 009, don't be arrogant and still call yourself a young person. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Host destroyed 152 naval branches and received reward. Colonel Mouse's treasure trove, treasure location. Is that all? After hearing the sound in his mind, Luo Xiu's face suddenly became somewhat strange. However, upon careful consideration, based on the proportion of writing and ink in the original work by Colonel Mouse, is it reasonable to bring such garbage rewards? Luo Xiu pouted and kicked Colonel Mouse's desk away according to the location provided by the system. Raise your right foot and stomp down on the floor that was previously pressed down by the desk. Dong! Accompanied by this muffled sound, Magino and Noqigao couldn't help but turn their gaze to Loxiu. Looking at the big hole on the floor that Loxiu had stepped on, as well as the treasure revealed inside, Noqigao's eyes instantly turned red. Noqigao was very clear that among the treasures hidden by Colonel Mouse, there was a portion of Nami a billionaire. Thinking of Nami, who had been on the verge of stealing pirate money in order to raise 100 million belly, and the shot she had received from Colonel Mouse before. Noki's eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness as she raised the matching gun in her hand and frantically pulled the trigger at the dead Colonel Mouse. Bang! 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 It was not until all the bullets in the magazine were shot out that Noqigao's rationality gradually recovered. On the other side, Magino looked at Noqigao with bloodstains on her body in horror, as if her heart was lifting. Nuo. Nuo-chi is tall. Noqi turned her head to look at Magino and squeezed out a relieved smile at her. I'm fine. The smile on Nochi's face, combined with the bloodstains on her body, made Magino shiver a bit. And at this moment, Luo Xiu walked up and smiled at Noqigao, praising her. Well done, Noqigao. Noqi glanced up at Luo Xiu, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice. Luoxiu, although you are using the village to force me, anyway, I still want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to seek revenge with my own hands. Luo Xiu chuckled and waved his hand, saying. Put away all these treasures. Glancing at Magino across from him, Luo Xiu's gaze made Magino's body tremble suddenly. He then forcefully suppressed his fear and quickly took steps to assist Noqigao in collecting the treasure together. Magino is well aware that with Nochi's high performance, she may have already gained the favor of the demon, Loxiu. If you haven't expressed yourself yet, maybe it won't be long before I lose my effectiveness. And once abandoned by Luo Xiu, her fate will definitely be extremely tragic. Everyone in Windmill Village is also at risk of being brutally killed by Luo Xiu. For the sake of the people in the village, she will also work even harder to please Luo Xiu. Yes, it's for the village, not for any other reason. While Magino and Noqigao were tidying up their treasures, Loxiu sat directly on Colonel Mouse's chair, took out the phone worm from the drawer, and directly began to contact Admiral Warring States. After the phone worm answered, Luo Xiu asked politely before the Warring States period could speak. Excuse me, is that Marshal of the Warring States period? The Warring States period frowned upon hearing this unfamiliar voice and said in a deep voice. I am from the Warring States period. What kind of person are you? A mouse. Luo Xiu leaned back on the chair with a big smile, kicking his legs on the table and grinning at the phone worm. I'm Luo Xiu, aren't you looking for me? Luo Xiu. Luo Xiu. After a brief doubt, the Warring States period suddenly remembered who Luo Xiu was, stood up, and angrily said to the telephone worm. Luo Xiu. Why are you holding this phone worm? Where are you? Where are the mice? Where are the sailors from the 152 branch? Luo Xiu shrugged off a little bear and said with a smile. Isn't this very obvious? I have slaughtered all the people from the 152 branch, not a single one has been left. As the words fell, the heavy panting of the warring states period came from the phone worms. Even through the phone worm, Luo Xiu could clearly feel how angry the naval marshal across from him was. The next second, a muffled sound suddenly sounded. Bang! The desk in the warring states period was slapped off by him, and he ignored it completely. His face was gloomy like water, and his eyes were filled with boundless anger, roaring at the phone worm. Luoxiu! You bastard! How dare you do such a thing? What infuriated the warring states period the most was that this guy dared to provoke himself so blatantly after annihilating 152 branches. Do you really think their navy is vegetarian? Can't deal with the fourth emperor, can't deal with you. Young people are too arrogant, but they will die. Listening to the words coming from the phone worm, Luo Xiu couldn't help but burst out laughing. Don't be arrogant, still call yourself a young person. By the way, during the warring states period, I'm calling you to tell you, isn't your navy looking for me? You don't need to come to the East China Sea, I will soon enter the Great Route, just wait for me on the Great Route. As Luo Xiu's words fell, the warring states across from him hung up the phone with a loud bang. With such a hot temper, it's easy to shorten one's lifespan. Luoxiu smiled silently upon seeing the situation, got up from the chair, and found that Magino and Noqi were looking at him with strange expressions on their faces. They really can't understand, where did Luo Xiu come from with the confidence to dare to hit the face of a naval marshal in the warring states period so crazily. Luoxiu walked forward and grabbed the slender waist of Magino and Noqigao, walking outward. There is absolutely no intention of explaining to the two of them. To endure. Playing the role of a pig and eating a tiger. This has never been Luo Xiu's personality. Go step on the horse with restraint. Go step on the horse, pretend to be a pig and eat a tiger. They have already gone further and further on the path of the destined villain, Luo Xiu is going to jump his face crazy. At the same time as Luo Xiu left the 152 branch with Magino and Noqigao, the marshal's office had become disorganized. Unable to control his anger, the warring states period smashed objects everywhere in the office. After venting their anger, the warring states period finally breathed heavily and dialed Cappu's phone. The phone worm had just connected, and before Capp could speak, the warring states period roared directly. Cappu! You don't need to go to the East China Sea. Just wait on the Great Route. I tell you, no matter what you do, you must catch that damn little ghost from Luo Xiu. I just want to see if that damn guy dares to be so arrogant after being caught by our navy. On the warship of the Great Voyage, Capp looked at the phone worm in his hand with a bewildered expression. What kind of stimulation did this guy get during the warring states period? Why did you suddenly have such a big temper? What did that little devil do, Luo Xiu? Can't we just destroy another naval branch? 010, Hand of the Wave. Luo Xiu's navigation skills. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After learning from the warring states period that Luo Xiu had also slaughtered all 152 branches in the East China Sea, Cappu's face instantly became gloomy. Cappu did not hesitate and directly assured the warring states. Don't worry, warring states. I will wait for him on the Great Route. With me here, I will definitely arrest Luo Xiu. After receiving Cappu's guarantee, the warring states directly hung up the phone worm. After all, the marshal's office was left in such a messy state by him, so it was natural for the warring states period to tidy it up properly. After the phone worm hung up, KB and Birumaber, who are Kappa students, approached to inquire. General Cappu, did that guy named Luo Xiu do anything bad again? Cappu nodded with a heavy face and a heavy tone. That's right. The sailors of the 152, East China Sea branch were all killed by that bastard. That bold little devil even took the initiative to contact the Warring States period and let our navy wait for him on the Great Route. Upon hearing these words, Kirby and Birumabur exchanged a glance, their faces filled with anger. Kabi clenched his fists and said angrily, "General Kapu. Leave that guy to me and Birumabur to deal with. We will definitely catch him and never allow this kind of villain to go unpunished." Birumabur, wearing an eye mask, nodded firmly and said, "Kabi is right. Lieutenant General Kapu, we will take care of him." Kapu was very satisfied with the reactions of his two students and his face slightly improved. "Since that little devil made such an arrogant gesture that we were waiting for him on the Great Route, I really want to see if he has the courage to come to the Great Route." Capp clenched his fist and made a clicking sound. For Capp, although he hates the hypocritical royal families of the Kingdom of Goya, in order to claim the title of the most beautiful kingdom in the East China Sea, surprisingly, he made the act of excluding all bad things. But no matter what, his hometown Windmill Village belongs to the territory of the Kingdom of Goya. That guy named Luo Xiu not only killed the king of the Kingdom of Goya, but also committed the act of slaughtering the naval branch. Of course, Kapu must make him pay the price for this. After getting angry, Kirby couldn't help but chuckle twice. "Lieutenant General Kapu, while we are waiting for Luo Xiu, we can also go and meet Lu Fizan. Luffy, aren't you on the Great Route right now?" At the end, the scene of meeting Luffy came to Kabi's mind, and he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Kapu nodded at the words and grinned. "You're right. That guy from the Warring States period, but he still made me ask Luffy to give up being a pirate. Of course, I have to execute the order. Let's set off now. It will take some time for Luo Xiu to arrive at the Great Route. Let's go see Lu Fei first." Kabi and Birumabur exchanged a glance, and both of them smiled. Based on their understanding of General Kapu, this kind of thing will only come to an end. Lu Fizan, in the end, will continue to be a pirate until he truly becomes the Pirate King. Although they are naval, Kirby and Birumabur are still very eager to see Lufthansa become the Pirate King. Moreover, according to the agreement between Kirby and Luffy, on the day when Luffy becomes the Pirate King, Kabi will also become a naval general. In order to become a naval general and fulfill his agreement with Mr. Luffy, he has never slackened at all since he joined the navy with Birumabur. Kabi firmly believes that one day, he will become one of the new 3 generals of the navy. And as for Birumabur, he can definitely become a naval general with himself. While Capp was leading his men to find his grandson, Luo Xiu was also driving down to the next target location with Magino and Nachi. The ship they boarded was obtained by Luo Xiu after slaughtering the Tianlong people. To put it bluntly, even if we look at the whole world, there are definitely not many ships with better quality than this one. And most importantly, the control is also very simple. "So, Magino, I'll leave the task of sailing to you." Magino lowered her head and glanced at the rudder of the ship. After a deep sigh, she reluctantly followed the direction instructed by Luo Xiu and began to sail. For Noqigao at this time, in her eyes, Luo Xiu was no longer just a demon using the village to threaten her. When the Coco West Village incident broke out, Noqigao was looking forward to killing both the dragon pirates and Colonel Mouse. But in the end, it only managed to defeat the dragon pirates. Colonel Mouse, due to his identity as a naval colonel, ultimately came to an end. It wasn't until Luo Xiu's appearance that Noqigao successfully killed Colonel Mouse and avenged the deepest hatred hidden in his heart. You should know that although Noqigao is not like Nami, for a lie of the dragon, he is willing to risk his life to steal the treasure of the pirates, after trying to gather 100 million baileys, by Coco West Village back from the hands of the dragon pirates. But in Noqigao's heart, there is no less hatred towards the dragon pirates and the mouse colonel who sheltered them from occupying Kekiaxi village than Nami. After all, Belmer, who had raised her and her sister Nami for many years, and even willing to sacrifice her life to save them, died in their hands. It is precisely because of this that, no matter what Luo Xiu needs her to do, Noqigao will not refuse. When Luo Xiu returned to the deck again, the sound of the system suddenly rang in his mind. Host teaches Noqi advanced navigation skills and rewards. Wave hand. After seeing the system's explanation of wave hand, Luo Xiu rubbed his chin and a playful smile appeared on his face. It has to be said that, the system is really awesome, and the rewards it provides are all things that Luo Xiu really wants to get. Although Noqigao is Nami's sister, but according to the length of writing she occupies in the original plot, it's not even much. Originally, Luo Xiu was already prepared not to receive two good rewards. I just didn't expect that although the reward I received this time was not intended to enhance Luo Xiu's strength. But with the hands of this wave, in terms of navigation, I'm afraid no one can compare to Luo Xiu. After verification, Luo Xiu found that, it seems that the reward he received this time is far more powerful than he imagined. To put it bluntly, with this wave-like hand, Luo Xiu can easily create a towering wave. Under this surging tide, no matter how high the quality of the target vessel is, it's absolutely impossible to resist it. P.S. The flowers didn't meet the additional conditions, but I still decided to add more. For the sake of the author's understanding, I hope readers can provide some data support.